Listening to Hard Lens Media. Thank you for all of you who are joining us right now. So we have some very important breaking stories that we're going to be going over, as well as an investigation piece that we have been working on for quite some time, as well as having special guest Illinois State Representative Will Guzzardi here in our studio. He'll be in the second hour. And so we just want to thank all of you for joining us. I'm joined here with Daniel Lupker, Lauren Hahn, who's joining us again. Welcome back, Lauren.
Thank you.
And so let's get this whole thing started, and let's start with actually some stuff that Hard Lens Media has done in the past week.
And real quick, I just want to give a thanks to our Patreon supporters in the audience today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's one of the perks on our Patreon page. If you help us out, support us, there's a lot of benefits in there. So check us out on Patreon if you want to know what they are. So your support actually helps us build more content and produce more shows just like this. So let's get started with some work that we actually did this past week. First, I want to start off with the tax protest that happened earlier. And it was in regards to what the GOP Senate passed, which is basically calling for these huge tax cuts for these large corporations. Hard Lens Media did 2 different live streams, and in the first live stream, we actually had numerous speakers talk about the disastrous costs that this tax cut will do to a lot of hardworking working class families. And we actually saw Senator Daniel Biss, who's one of the Democratic primary candidates who's running for governor, speak to the crowd. And there's a huge amount of rage towards this tax cut, and there was like a crowd of at least 700 to maybe 1,000 people there. Daniel Lupker was there with me. We were filming it. We actually had a chance to interview 3 members of the People's Lobby, of the People's Lobby there, as well as we actually had an opportunity to interview Lieutenant Governor candidate with the Chris Kennedy campaign, Rod Joy. So at least to our knowledge, there were at least 2 representatives of 2 different Democratic candidates who were running for governors there. There was the Lieutenant Governor candidate, Rod Joy, with Chris Kennedy, and Senator Daniel Biss, who was speaking much earlier. If you want to actually see those 2 live streams, check it out on our Facebook page. But, you know, let's just really talk about how people are right now stepping up to really voice their concern and anger towards this tax cut.
I got to say, it was really interesting. This may be the first time I've ever seen the police seem to enjoy and almost seem to want to participate in the protest. They seemed
really.
Yeah, I just kept noticing. I'm used to this. There's this tension that you usually feel when there's police.
Yeah, because we've actually been on the ground in numerous protests.
Yeah, it could be very much that the organizers, because they had all those organizers that were invested, that were making sure that everything was going smoothly. It could have been them doing their job. It could have been the police understanding this protest,
right,
and agreeing with it. It could just be, I mean, it was a lot of factors, but it's like everyone that was on the ground, whether they were enforcing, being a organizer or being a protester, everyone seemed to be on the same page, which I think, I don't think I've ever felt that before.
Yeah, because for the record, I mean, I got there a little bit earlier, and I was in the front crowd. I did the first live stream where Senator Daniel Biss, as well as numerous other great speakers, were talking about the disasters that this tax cut will do towards working class families. And I know you were outside, so you probably saw something on the outside crowd that maybe I didn't see, because I mean, I couldn't see any police where I was at. But you know, the one thing I saw too was all the signs and all the people saying that it's not right. And this protest was actually taking place at LaSalle Street, which is close to City Hall and close to a lot of large financial institutions in Chicago.
District.
Yeah, it's a trade district. So you can bet that the large corporations and lobbyists and donors weren't too happy to see that large crowd there, nor were they probably happy to see Senator Daniel Biss or Rod Joy there, because you know, they were standing in solidarity with you know, all these people from different backgrounds, and everyone seems to be scared. And of course, right now this bill is going to get, I think, a review in the House sometime this week.
They have reconciliation now, so they have to make agreeing bills, but they just keep discovering stuff in the bills that no one else saw. So it
well, Daniel, they didn't read the bill.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
So like, there's one provision that they don't want employers giving gift cards to employees anymore.
Oh.
Because that would be a travesty, and they might not record it on their taxes.
Oh, no. Okay.
And I think they had another provision that if you do tipped work, as long as the Restaurant pays you minimum wage. The owner can take your tips.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, normal stuff.
Oh, okay, normal stuff. Kind, gentle, humane.
Gentle, humane actions.
All right, it makes sense. Okay. I mean, but, it's just goes to show you that if this does get passed, if the House and Senate do support it and make it pass, and it's put before President Trump, he's going to rubber stamp it. And then, I could tell you one thing. Of the people we interviewed, they said that the protests aren't going to stop. They're going to still keep on crowding the streets, making sure that all their representatives know that the people are going to definitely be coming out to vote in 2018. I think the midterm 2018 elections will be a sign of things to come. And speaking of which, moving on to another issue that we've been covering here a lot at Heartlands Media is gentrification and lack of accountability from Cook County or City Hall in regards to helping working class families here in Chicago. Now, the Northwest Side Housing Center went to the Northwest Side Equity Assurance, and I was there doing a solo job. But I will tell you this, I never saw a shorter meeting in my life. So you had this council basically, talking about issues affecting the district, especially where the Northwest Side Housing Center is at. And the meeting lasted for surprisingly 3 minutes, just covering just simple stuff. And they only meet maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And you can actually check that live stream out, the entirety, on our Facebook page as well. But Daniel, what do you want to say?
They got to get paid $100,000. 3 minutes is a lot of work.
Well, I mean, I guess. I guess. But see, there was a large crowd there. One of our guests, James Ronan, was there as well, and he was basically speaking of the grievances that the community was having towards the Northwest Side Housing Equity Insurance, and how that there's around $10 million that's there to help out the struggling families keep their homes and ensure at the same time that they're not displaced or kicked out. And the one thing we kept hearing from the council was, well, it's not in our hands. We're not really they were kind of pushing the blame. And there was a representative from the mayor's office standing alongside the Northwest Side Housing Center. So, I mean, that's something good to see, that the mayor at least sent a representative.
Or he sent a watchdog.
Yeah, somebody there to really hold it accountable. But it was just like shifting the blame, and they were telling the Northwest Side Equity Insurance people were telling the Northwest Side Housing Center people that you got to go to Springfield, you got to talk to their legislators, and they said that they did talk to their legislators, but all what they were getting was a simple runaround. It was really sad to see that, because you would expect some forms of accountability, and all what they were getting, the people from the Northwest Side Housing Center was just getting a simple runaround. Daniel, I mean, you saw the live stream. Lauren, I'm pretty sure you saw it too. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Didn't they give you a lot of issue with wanting to videotape?
Yes, and this was a public meeting. Okay, so, I mean, I don't think they really expected anyone to really come in there and talk to them. And, there's one thing I do want to mention, which was that, we were definitely given, the chance to live stream and film, but there was a lot of cops there. It was like 5 or 6 cops in that building for a group of people. Like, most of them were some of them were like senior citizen people, some of them were women. I mean, you didn't really need that many cops in there for what was really a small crowd.
But how are you going to protect people that only work a few days a year for $100,000 for 3 minutes?
Well, speaking of which, if to all our listeners and people on our live stream who are watching us now, if you do get a chance to check out that live stream, you'll see the Northwest Side Housing Center people say, like, well, look, we've been to this office numerous times and no one is here. Every time we're waiting here 45 minutes, 2 hours. We come here like a few times in a week, and the thing's still the same. I mean, your doors are closed. We can't get in contact with you guys. We're trying to talk to you. And this is the only time we've been there. And they mentioned to the Northwest Side Housing Equity Council that, this is the 3rd time, 4th time we've been to this meeting. You guys wrap it up for only 2 or 3 minutes. Nothing's ever done. And I think at the end, one of the people said, if you want to replace me, go ahead. It'd be a pleasure. It's like, really? You're with Cook County. You're supposed to help people, and you're saying, if you want to replace me, it'll be a pleasure. Thank you. Like
I'd like to see you try.
Yeah, it's weird. It was so weird.
This job is such a burden.
But you know what? I will say this. They did talk. There was a lot of groups there that had connections with other grassroots organizations. So, of course, they're going to definitely spread the word of what happened. And it's just another example of Cook County, Chicago politics. and I definitely wish the Northwest Side Housing Center to all the best. But now let's move on to another story that we actually did, which was net neutrality. We've been covering this a lot, and over there by State Street, there was Indivisible Illinois, as well as a few other grassroots organizations. They're basically protesting Verizon, as well as other large corporations that would benefit the displacement of net neutrality, the removal of net neutrality, and all the speakers there were definitely saying, like, if it's gone, it's going to impact low income working class families. It's going to impact businesses. It's going to impact just how we use the internet as a whole. So if let's say you're using the internet right now, you're listening to us on q4radio.org, or you're watching us on our live stream. If there's no net neutrality, well, these large corporations can then decide to set up different types of bundle packages that let's say you have to pay additional $50 to use YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, or if you want to use Hulu, you have to, they could raise the price. They will be in control of everything that we see and do, and the stuff that we get for free will be mediocre garbage, stuff that you wouldn't like to watch. And I'm definitely proud to say I'm surprised how lucky we were to actually get Alderman Jesus Chuy Garcia to be one of the speakers there. And as you all know, he recently got the endorsement from Our Revolution Illinois, Our Revolution, to run for a candidate of the 4th Illinois Congressional District. So I'm glad to see him standing out there with the people. Our Revolution has definitely made it clear that net neutrality needs to stay. We can't just give it away to the large corporations. And, once again, that's what we like to see, government officials or or candidates actually standing with the people and fighting to protect what little freedoms we have.
Yeah, it's good to see that that's happening. I think it was also a very poignant attack to go after Verizon, since that is Pai's chairman of the FCC's former and some would argue current employer. Mm-hmm. And so I think, going after them, it makes Verizon look bad, specifically, again, with the chairman being in power. It was, like you said, after you did the live stream, Daniel, Chewy was here. I mean, it's a big deal, and people are taking it seriously, as they should. This is the bedrock for modern American society.
Yeah. Well, and I also will definitely leave a point in regards to how people will vote in 2018 for the midterms, because they're going to want to know who's standing to protect their freedoms. And since we have Chuy Garcia out there standing alongside the protesters, I mean, that's going to be, a huge selling point in regards to stating that, hey, I'm not going to, vote alongside these corporations. I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to stay with the people. So let's hope that, we at least get somebody in the 4th Congressional District to stand with net neutrality.
And I would even argue that progressive politics itself requires net neutrality to operate, because it doesn't have money to run TV ads, but it has the will and the desire of people to do grassroots internet-based activism.
It's essentially the last free market we have.
Yeah, it is. So that's what we got to do now. Yeah. So now let's actually start moving on towards another story, and that's education here in Chicago. And we just recently found this out right now. Forrest Claypool, the CPS chief, resigns after being accused of an Essex probe cover-up. So, it's nothing unusual to worry about. It's standard Chicago politics, right, Daniel?
Yeah, and so we know that because people have been fighting for an elected school board, this man was appointed by our mayor.
Oh, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who's doing a good job.
Who's doing a very good job.
Well, so we have a Chicago Tribune article right here, and it's basically saying that Claypool is being accused of a full-blown cover-up by the district inspector general, who called for the CEO's ouster in a blistering report given to the school board last week, Wednesday. Rahm Emanuel, our mayor, he quickly came to his aid, Forrest Claypool. But, sources said that he did not have, basically the full support of other members who were trying to tell the mayor that, no, you shouldn't stand alongside him. Basically, it's apparent that he's actually been covering up in regards to, how he's been handling CPS, as well as the status of the Chicago Public Schools here in the city of Chicago. I mean, Daniel, we've seen numerous people complain about Forrest Claypool. What are your thoughts?
Well, people have been asking for an elected school board for a long time, and this is one example why they are. You have Forrest Claypool, who is being taken out because he was covering up an investigation.
Mhm.
And you don't. And again, then what's he covering up? Is you don't just cover up something and make yourself open like that, unless you have something that is worse than the consequences of what he went through. So, who knows? What does it say in the article specifically? What he was covering up, or just that he was caught covering it up?
It's more of like being caught covering up an Essex probe right now.
So there you go. But again, my point is that to do that requires the risk of being caught doing that to be a smaller risk than the ethics probe finding what it was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if this is going to continue, or whether him being out means, oh, well, we don't need the probe anymore. But, Chicago, I mean, there's not a lot new to it. It's people being corrupt, the machine being corrupt, people electing people that will do things for them. This is as Chicago a story as a Chicago hot dog or a deep dish or other things that people associate with Chicago.
Well, I don't think a lot of people are going to miss him, because let's look at Claypool's long history of running CPS. He was the voice of the cutbacks. He shut down numerous schools. He threatened to state that he'd continue cutting down schools if there wasn't education funding unless it could overhaul its education funding formula. He also did a lot of cost-cutting plans, presented annual budgets with massive gaps to state lawmakers, and he basically instigated furlough days and slashed school-level spending because of the district's collapsing enrollment. So, under his watch,
he sounds like an ethical paragon to me.
Well, under his watchful eye, Chicago public schools were being shut down. So, but hey, Rahm Emanuel's doing a good job. I mean, he appointed him in there. He was actually in charge of CPS when Mayor Emanuel became our mayor in 2011. So, no. He was in charge of CTA, and then in 2015, he picked Forrest Claypool to be City Hall chief of staff, and then a few months later, he dispatched Claypool to be in charge of CPS.
Do we know, does that mean that was he in charge of the Ventra change, or is that someone else?
The Ventra change was, I think, going to happen. Daley, of course, okay. under Daley's watch, that's how we got the green monsters, those green box parking disasters that we're stuck with for 99 years, 97 years now.
Don't worry, not that long.
So I mean, Ventra was going to happen. I mean, Chicago, it's the cesspool of neoliberalism, and it's where money talks. And if you're just a low-class, working-class family member, or working-class family, you're not going to get any kind of proper representation unless there's a severe overhaul in how our local governments run here in Cook County and in the city. So that's accountability. And speaking of accountability, we're going to move to a story out of state, and I'm really curious to see how this election is going to turn out. But it's in Alabama. We all know the story about Roy Moore and the allegations that are being set upon him, where he basically is being charged of being a pedophile, or people are saying that he's a pedophile. He's sexually harassed and abused women who are 14 years of age. He was
banned from the mall, banned from schools.
Right. And then he actually went on to make a statement how when was America great, and it was during the slavery days.
But I think he said, despite the slavery, that's when we were the best.
Yeah, despite the slavery, that's when we were
despite
the best.
The defining feature of the era.
Yeah, thank you for that correction. So, but, it goes to show you where his mindset is at and where his supporters are at, too. Because I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that he still is in a race and no one's asked him to step down or step aside. And he got the full support of President Donald Trump, just so that Trump can have his vote in the United States Senate. And even Republicans now are kind of backpedaling their recent statements against him, to where they're welcoming him in and getting the support.
I've heard a lot of them, especially like Mitch McConnell. They usually now say, we're going to let the people of Alabama decide, instead of just coming out and pointing out what is clearly wrong.
We're going to let the people of Alabama decide is code for, if they vote him in, okay. If they don't, then we'll say we never supported him.
Yeah, so it's a win-win for them no matter what.
Well, unless he loses.
Yes. Well, even then, it's still a win, because then they don't have to deal with him.
They don't have a pedophile in their midst. Yeah, that's true. That's bad PR.
But you would think that they would hold themselves. You would assume, I guess, they would hold themselves to a higher standard, but they're not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that the Democrats. I mean, even with Franken, I was actually a little bit surprised, that he retired as quickly as he did, because he was like, I want an ethics investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And the Democrats and it's liberal media, quote unquote, in general, seems to be taking these new allegations very seriously. It's as if they finally realized, hey, if a bunch of women say something, or even one woman with credible information says something, we should listen.
Yeah.
Whereas the Republicans are still saying, yeah, I mean, he might be a pedophile, he might be going after young women, but he's a Republican.
Look, all the United States senators who were Democrats called for his resignation, and I think it's a good thing that the Democrats did that. At least they're understanding the movement that's happening here. The hashtag Me Too movement, all those women were put on the cover of Time magazine, and it's definitely showing that there is a shift in how people handle these, allegations and really the long time silence of abuse here in this country. And the Democrats, I think, did the right thing by calling for his resignation. They're holding themselves accountable, and it really shows to themselves, to at least voters, independents, progressives, Democratic voters, that they're not going to just turn a blind eye towards people who might help them, pass certain things in the Senate. But if said senator or representative is a screw up or has a horrible history that's now being brought to light, get him out, and we'll elect somebody better.
It's going to be interesting to see if he gets voted in.
Or like who replaces him? You mean?
No. If he wins.
Oh, Roy Moore.
Because then it really says a lot more about who votes for Republicans, I think. If that's more important. I don't know, because then I kind of feel like I'd be contradicting myself on the whole Hillary versus Trump argument. I'll retract that.
Yeah. Well, it'll be definitely an election that we'll be keeping a close eye. 2018, at the end of March is when the voting happens. So I'm pretty sure we're going to be covering it, who won, who lost, and Alabama will be one of those states that everyone in the media, be it independent or corporate, will definitely cover. So we'll see who wins. Hopefully the people of Alabama make a smart choice and don't vote for the pedophile, but then again, it's their choice, their vote. So yeah. So let's move on to another story, and that's relating towards basically CPS, returning back here to Chicago, shutting down 4 Inglewood's schools. And it's basically sparked a large protest against it. So, guys, what are your thoughts on students stepping up? Because for a long time, we've been told that young people don't want to get involved, and they don't really care about elections, or is it at current events that are affecting them?
Yeah, well, as I'm sure Claypool would have said, hey, look at those kids being truant.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm sure it'd come out like that.
Well, right now, the officials said at one of the schools, Robinson High School, the campus will be demolished to make way for a state-of-the-art $85 million high school to serve 1,200 students. But nearly 400 students would need to switch schools next year under the current plan.
And what we've learned from that is it's actually far more profitable for private interests to build schools than to really do anything with the schools or the students.
Yeah.
Because when you build a school, something like you get a double tax credit for it.
Right.
I forget exactly how that works out, but building public schools is now all the rage. It's a building boom for schools that don't, especially, hey, we don't have funding to run these schools, but we have the funding to spend way more than that to build new schools that perhaps get used, perhaps don't.
Yeah, and I do want to mention that the schools that are being shut down are Harper, Hope High School, Team Inglewood, and Robinson High School, and they will be closing sometime in the spring. And I want everyone to remember that way back in 2013, CPS closed nearly 50 schools, and this was under Mayor Emanuel's term as mayor, his first term as mayor, because he was elected in 2011. So it goes to show you that he's definitely followed through with one of his promises that he made a few months ago, that more schools will be shutting down. And we've had numerous people come on to the show. I mean, last Saturday we had Fritz Kagi explain the disastrous consequences when a school in a local community is shut down and boarded up. I mean, it leaves a long-lasting scar on the people, and it devastates the community. So here we have 4 schools being shut down, but there's no money or resources for them, yet somehow the city of Chicago and Cook County can stamp $95 million for a police academy. So, I mean, that's all good. So That being said, it's pretty depressing to hear about, but we're going to push forward and go on to our investigative piece. Lauren Hahn, one of our investigative reporters, was leading the charge on this, and Daniel, I think you want to start off first.
Yeah, so this is a big story that a lot of people have already talked about, but we did our own investigation, so here's what we have. Heartlands Media has been working for the last month on its investigation of Jordan Sheridan and Truth Against the Machine. I want to be entirely transparent with our listeners and our viewers with the context of this investigation and our connections to the parties involved. We have a history with Jordan Sheridan, Truth Against the Machine, and Christian, who wrote the Huffington Post articles. Daniel Lupker and Kit Cabello shadowed Jordan Sheridan in East Chicago in August of 2016 after meeting him at a TYT meetup. I, Daniel, have done paid work for Jordan twice. First in January of 2016 covering Flint and East Chicago. The second time in January of 2017 covering water toxicity in East Chicago with Scott Smith. Myself and Kit know Christian through our work in Wolfpack in 2013 when we passed SJR 42, the amendment using Article 5 to get money out of politics. Lauren is a former member of Truth Against the Machine, leaving before the allegations came out, and knows Christian as her former editor in Truth Against the Machine's Illinois team. Heartlands Media has also interviewed Jordan on our radio station, this station, and let him promote his book, Corporate Con Job. This investigation will not focus on the sexual allegations against Jordan Sheridan. We kept Christian out of our investigation to ensure its neutrality. However, we did contact him to clarify articles he wrote. Our coverage focuses on the conduct of Jordan Sheridan and how he ran Truth Against the Machine and how he handled its finances. With that said, here are our findings and the timeline.
So we thought it would be important to go over the timeline. The first would be the night in question on May 19th of 2017, and we're going to go through the development of the Truth Against the Machine summit that took place in New York City in November this year, followed by the group chat that was developed that following week leading up to the first publications up until now. So we'll start with the first day of the Truth Against the Machine summit. So this was supposed to be a congregation of Truth Against the Machine reporters to come to New York and work on the future of what the organization was going to be. It was considered to rename it as Fight News, but essentially the reporters would bring their research and they would sign up for their one-on-one spots and have a live stream with Jordan for their research. And on the outside, aside from the one-on-one live streams, there were two locations for the reporters to reside. The first place was in Jordan's apartment in Manhattan, and then as more reporters came in, there was a designated Airbnb location that was fit for 4 people, and I believe that it went up to 5 that were just crashing on air mattresses, couches, but essentially ended up having to fend for themselves as far as food, toiletries, and whatnot, whereas the members that were staying at Jordan's apartment had access to the TATM funds, so there was slight uncomfortable positions for the people that were staying in the Airbnb as opposed to Jordan's apartment.
And this took place on November 10th. What's important to mention is that it's mainly the editors and Jordan. You know, there are a few of the journalists, but it was mainly the editors and Jordan who were allowed to stay with Jordan and had access to Jordan and had more amenities that they didn't have to pay for out of pocket, whereas the Airbnb people, like Lauren said, had to purchase toiletries out of their own pocket.
Yes.
It seems kind of poorly planned, just a little bit, just how, all these reporters were supposed to meet up with Jordan. It doesn't, I don't know, you'd think there'd be more thought into this, because an airplane ticket to go to New York or to meet Jordan probably isn't cheap.
No, and I mean, some people were, again, to reiterate to our viewers, Truth Against the Machine, there's not a designated headquarters. It's a national team. You have reporters, from California, from Flint, Michigan, from Chicago, all over the country. So not all of the members were able to attend this summit, but what it was supposed to be was this professional conference to discuss the future of the organization, and instead, it was confirmed by the people that I've spoken to that it felt more like a frat party atmosphere later on in the evenings.
And we had a lot of people talking about how they were using the donations that were paid to Truth Against the Machine to pay for meals, I think they paid for the plane tickets, which, I think that one you could say would be an acceptable use of funds. But then they were also buying, quote-unquote, expensive wines that people were being made fun of for not being sophisticated enough to taste properly.
Yes.
And then continuing.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
To taste proper. I mean, look, I get there's a proper way to taste wine, but I don't know. Call me old-fashioned. I'll drink booze the way I want to.
Yeah. But then continuing on the 11th.
Yes. So on the 11th, there was an employee that was then fired shortly after her one-on-one session. She was covering and did a lot of research about Puerto Rico, and it was shortly after there was an allegation that she had thrown glass, and because of that they decided to fire her. However, there were many witnesses that counteracted that. They claimed that it was a sleeping device that one of the members needed to use, and a part of it got knocked over and shattered. For whatever reason, it was used as if she had thrown it, so they used that. And then she was promised that after she was fired, the ticket home, which was worth like $400, something like that, that she would be reimbursed, and she was promised by one of the editors, Sam Osser, that she would be reimbursed. I have another reporter that can confirm that she heard that as well, and this person was never reimbursed for that ticket.
Wow.
So then this is when the whole group chat kind of starts forming. You have Z contacting Paula after Paul was fired, and that's when they started talking. That's when this chat started going, and under the suspicion of siding with Paula, she was then also fired, and her articles were moved from the Truth Against the Machine main page.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm real curious about this though, because in regards to the funds that Truth Against the Machine was getting, what role did TYT play in this, and also how were they getting all like the backing? Like, who else was like actually giving them money, like Truth Against the Machine? I mean, it couldn't just been the donors. I mean,
we're gonna get to that. We just want to get through the timeline in order.
Okay. All right.
So what happens on the 12th? We want to go to the 12th.
So on the 12th, the summit was still going on, but at this point, Paula was then contacted by Carly Hammond, the woman that has now led or is leading the sexual assault allegations, and she wanted to explain her story in a safe space amongst friends that she came to know through Truth Against the Machine. So since the prior night around 8 p.m. Saturday, the group at that point was just Z Cohen, one of the co-founders of Truth Against the Machine, and Paula Martinez-Benj. So on Sunday, Carly Hammond was added to it. There's a safe space. It's clear and respectful, but there's that understanding that this is supposed to be confidential in a safe space. So over the next few days, there were more reporters that were added to this, exchanging stories, comparing notes, seeing how to cope with a lot with what they've experienced, what they've witnessed, and a lot of questions that they had. And it looks like one of the members of that group had leaked screenshots of this group chat to Jordan Sheridan and his team.
And this is happening on the 16th.
Yes, but we'll get to that too. So at this point, November 16th, Carly has not made any statements whatsoever. She was still on the fence as to whether she even wanted to come out with any allegations. It was just purely the conversation, just telling her story to, or amongst her friends, amongst her TATM or ex-TATM peers. So on the 16th, Jordan then emails Carly Hammond, and this is before his Medium article was published, telling her that she was lying and that these allegations were false, and if Carly were to go public, that he would have to as well, and he would have to defend himself. Well,
and then 2 hours later.
Not even 2 hours later, Carly has yet to make any public statement about this, and Jordan then goes forward and publishes his article on Medium. Sorry.
So then what basically happens is the group chat starts freaking out because they realize in his Medium article that you almost can take the entire group chat that they've been, again, this confidential chat, this private chat amongst themselves, and it's almost a point for point, like if you read a statement someone wrote and then you wrote a couple sentences to an article, then you read another quote, and then you wrote a few more sentences, that's what the article in Medium seemed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I had a few of the reporters that were in the group chat confirm that his article read as if it mirrored almost identically to the points that were made in the group chat. And at this point, none of the group chat shots were public or anything, and as far as the group knew, they didn't even know that Jordan even had access to those conversations. And in his piece, so it sends a panic and confusion to the group chat, and a part of Jordan's Medium post read, "During my encounter with the woman in question, I followed this principle completely. The woman in question and another woman in our group of friends, it was me and 3 other people, began kissing and touching each other in a jacuzzi, so I left them and went to bed. Sometime after that, the man in the group woke me up to show that, said the woman had come to my bed with the other woman. They were having oral sex with one another, and I was asked to participate. I've written statements from the other 2 people in the room confirming that they heard me ask the woman receiving oral sex if she was okay and if I could approach her intimately, and most importantly, heard her consent. During the night, we had a few beers, but nobody was drunk."
However, we've been able to confirm both actually through Jordan's own posts of that night, where he was talking about the White Russian he had and something about that these are the Russians that the media should be looking for. He's making some jokes about it, but they were drinking much more heavily than a few beers.
And there was also a photo that was posted from that evening that displayed a table full of alcoholic drinks. So I don't know if those few beers were beers that were later in the evening, but it certainly didn't look like those were the only drinks that they had. And this conflicts with Carly's story as well, where it wasn't just a few drinks. So there are some differences in both of their stories that don't exactly line up.
So, but at this point, once this group chat came out, Christian, who we all now know as the guy who wrote the Huffington Post article, more or less, again, the group is in panic. So he whips out with very little research. He just puts out an article on Huffington Post. And because of the way that this happens, the article is easily picked apart. It doesn't look good. It looks rushed. It doesn't look valid or legitimate. Again, this was everything that we've researched says that this was because everyone was freaked out by this Medium article and felt that they needed to immediately counter the story.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that they were caught off guard. And Christian, in his H.A. Goodman interview, even said it felt as if Jordan was anticipating our response to be like this. And his article came out, the first one came out maybe 3 hours or so after Jordan's first post. And perhaps a couple hours later, around like 8 or so, that was when the second article came out. Now, mind you, the first one that that Christian published did not include Carly's name. He said that he would be doing a follow-up piece. And then in the second one, he did include her identity and quotes and in further detail as to what happened.
And then that's when Jordan has the claim that he can that he has proof of malfeasance, that he has this evidence that he would talk about to everyone. I have this evidence that'll prove that I'm innocent. That evidence turned out to simply be the screen captures from the private group chat and them talking amongst themselves, which we also have access to and look through ourselves.
Yes, and many of the members have even said, that they've thought about just publishing all of it. They're like, we have nothing to hide, but they, at this point, they haven't really been sure if it's that relevant anymore. However, if that's the only proof that they have, and we'll go over some of the other proof that Jordan has mentioned, that they have, that these allegations are false, but that's probably the biggest one. And we have the members of those screenshots even saying, we want to be transparent, and if that's the proof that you have, maybe we'll publish it. So,
okay.
But moving on,
let's move on to the 17th.
Well, we should make a point that Jordan was placed on administrative leave on the 16th.
That's true. That wasn't public to anyone at that point, though. So,
yes.
At the point of the 16th occurring, no one knew that had occurred.
Yes, and in his article, Jordan's article on the 16th, he mentions that he was on administrative leave, and at that point, it wasn't even announced until later that evening that he was. So I thought that was kind of an odd announcement as well.
Okay, so then moving to the 17th, that's when Jordan counters the Huffington Post articles that Christian has done. The Huffington Post pulls down those articles, saying, and quote, "Obviously, we aren't making any statement about the veracity of the claims within. It's simply that we don't have the ability to fact-check and stand behind that sort of original reporting in a contributor post." So that's what Huffington Post said as a response to taking down the articles. They just couldn't prove it one way or the other, and they didn't have the time or whatever to do that. So then Christian condenses both of the articles he's published and re-uploads them on Medium. And at that point, Christian Parks makes an official statement on Facebook.
Yes, so now we have a lot of the reporters that are starting to publish their own pieces, their own personal statements, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, or on Medium. But we're starting to see a pattern of a lot of people starting to speak up. And one of those reporters would be Paula Martinez-Benj, and she wrote a Medium article called "The Failure of the Progressive Movement, Examining the White Savior Complex, Sexual Harassment, Rape Culture, and Misogyny." And I quote, "For that live stream," and she's referring to the TATM summit, "I was the only one who actually read the article thoroughly and caught Gomert's name, which reminded me of Gomert's bigoted, racist commentary from the past and his connections to big oil and gas donors. Both of these talking points came from my research that we used during the live stream, and Jordan never credited me for that work during that live stream. Jordan has done this to other reporters in the past that have left TATM and TYT. Jordan has worked with the other journalists by butchering their content to match his cringeworthy cliche phrases, setups in order to create trauma porn clickbait material. I know this for a fact because not only am I a victim of TYT's clickbait material, but I am part of Jordan's white savior complex." And all of these articles, by the way, all of these sources we will be posting later on today, because a lot of these, they go into great length, just all of the sources that we will be mentioning, interviews and whatnot, so but we can get to that later.
I got to just put out, so like behind the scenes, Lauren's put in over 12 hours of just watching interviews that have been public. I mean, there's over 25 documents that have been out. We're going to put all this out, but it's a lot of work to go through.
And Lauren, you've done a fantastic job, being the leader of this investigation. So all credit is due. Lauren Hahn, you are definitely one hell of an investigative reporter.
Well, I think the credit goes to everybody that put their own credibility on the line to try to seek the truth and get it out there and try to figure out how to move on and how to fix the issues. But let's continue.
So at this point is when Jordan's PR manager, and how do you say her last name again?
Zakowski.
She gets involved. She's the one who at one point managed Vox Veritas, who comes in a little bit later, and she does PR work for Jordan, and she's connected with his book Corporate Con Job.
So she had posted, and we're still on November 17th, she posted on Facebook these screenshots of a private discussion between Z. Cohen and Jordan Sheridan. And these messages date from October 20th about how Z. Cohen, again, one of the co-founders of Truth Against the Machine, who also worked with TYT, how she was the ringleader of this group chat that formed after the summit. That didn't form until November 16th. The screenshots show that Z thought Carly was lying and did not believe her, and that she was upset about Jordan firing her. However, after the formation of the group and the additional testimonies of sexual harassment were shared amongst the group, Z had changed her mind and believed Carly was telling the truth. Quoting TATM reporter Colin Hanna's piece on Medium, this means that by claiming Cohen as the ringleader, Sheridan is also claiming the conspiracy took place on prior to October 20th. For Sheridan's conspiracy narrative to make any sense, the plot would have had to have taken place after November 8th, during the TATM New York City summit. This lines up with Cohen's version of events that she originally believed Hammond was a liar, but later supported her. This is yet another example of Sheridan twisting the events to suit his narrative, or he's lying. Now, we also have Z. Cohen's personal statement on Facebook from that day as well. And she says, "I am beyond disgusted by the allegations that have been brought forward by multiple women claiming that my former colleague and one of my closest friends, Jordan Sheridan, sexually assaulted and harassed them. To say I didn't see the signs would be a lie. I say I supported the first victim that came forward would also be a lie. When former TATM reporter Carly Hammond approached me about the situation back in May, I refused to believe her. I knew if I chose to stick up for her, my relationship with Jordan would be in jeopardy, which would put my career on the line. Am I disgusted in not coming forward before there were more victims? Yes. But I also know that it's never too late to do what's right. Anyone who claims I am out to ruin Jordan's life doesn't know me. I started TATM with Jordan. That organization is just as much my brainchild as it is his. To see it go down hurts my soul. Almost a year of my life was spent building it from the ground up, and it's time to let go. While I love Jordan and all he did for me, both as a colleague and a friend, that does not excuse what he has done to these women. You are all strong as hell for coming out, and I promise I will be there to walk through the fire with you."
Okay, at this point, just because I'm trying to make sure we get through this entire story, we have 30 minutes. We're going to give you guys as much detail as possible. TATM put out an official statement. We're going to skip that, but we're going to have that posted along with the other sources so you can read that. That was their official statement. And at that point on that day, Lauren then interviewed Griffin, and then Jordan told us at Hardlands Media that Carly's allegations were false.
Right.
And then we want to move to the November 18th is when Christian appears on H.A. Goodman for the first time. And Chelsea appears on Claudia Stauber's show.
Chelsea Lyons.
And Carly plans to be on Tim Black, but then Tim Black cancels after getting a email from Jordan's lawyer.
Yeah, in fact, Tim Black did like an 8-minute, 10-minute video on his YouTube page explaining the situation and the fact that he did reach out to Jordan Sheridan first and foremost, because I think if we all look back, they did have a falling out, but then they kind of made up at the People's Summit here that was here in Chicago some time ago. In fact, they did a whole sit-down talk that was on a live stream for TYT Politics. And then he messages Jordan, and I think Jordan said, "Give me your email," and then that's when Tim Black gets an email from Jordan Sheridan's lawyer, I believe.
Yes. So, but then to run to the 19th.
Oh, I just want to say real quick the reason why he received an email.
Right.
Tim Black received an email from Jordan Sheridan, right?
From his PR.
Right. Okay.
And the letter included that if Tim Black could possibly become a third party of a conspiracy to defame. So because of this suspicious email, he decided that he wanted to seek legal counseling, and before having on, just to avoid any possible lawsuit or anything else that the email included.
Okay. So now really quickly we're going to jump to the 19th, and then we're going to go on break for 5 minutes. We're going to come back and we're going to finish the rest of what we have along with the financial discoveries that we made.
Okay.
So another prior TATM reporter, for the time being, I will keep her name anonymous, but she also published an article on WordPress, and the title of the post was "The Alleged Sexual Assault Victim Outed by Boss and Then Silenced," and we have a quick quote here from her. "Those rumors were private tales of the victims of a small and recently formed support group comprised of victims and the former employees of Jordan Sheridan. The private chat was leaked to Jordan and staff at Truth Against the Machine by an active employee of TATM who gained the trust of others by sharing her own stories of sexual abuse, naming Jordan Sheridan as the abuser."
Okay, with that, after the break, we're going to come back to November 20th. There's a few longer days where a lot of things happen, but we're going to go from there. But for now, we're going to jump on to break while we get our guest, Will Guzzardi, situated, and we will be right back. Okay, guys, and we're back, so let's continue. Okay, we said we're going to start on the 20th, so let's go there. Lauren?
Yes.
Everything ready? Okay. So starting on the 20th.
All right, so November 20th, couple things happening. Jordan writes another article defending himself and claims that nothing was wrong. We had a former TATM editor-in-chief, Taylor Raines, publishing a Medium article as well. We had Ada Chavez from The Intercept releasing The Young Turks and reporter part ways following sexual assault allegations. And then we finally have Carly Hammond speaking for the first time publicly on Tim Black's show. Again, her first public statement, and this is 4 days after Jordan's first post on Medium.
Right. And so, again, we were talking during the break, we want to make sure we cover everything. So we have one quote we wanted to read from the former editor-in-chief of Truth Against the Machine.
All right, so quoting Taylor, she said, "I heard so many condescending instances of 'you're so great at blank, and I think I can make you better.' He said things, 'I'm sure you're not like every other crazy bitch in my life, and I can trust you with blank.' I heard him egotistically boast to management about it being his site and his decisions over trivial things, while volunteer employees slaved over a hot keyboard to offer content to his site, hoping to someday be paid. I heard accusations that he was not going to pay certain people or even take the donation money and run, and there was no rhyme or reason as to why people eventually got paid the amounts they did. I heard him trash talk journalists and threaten to fire them in private, but they're still writing for him to this day. I heard him heard about him sleeping with an employee, which at its core is in poor taste. I heard the sexual misconduct allegations from more than one colleague. Then I heard brilliantly manufactured excuses made to the team as to why the original executive board left, skirting the issue entirely. Hindsight has shown me that I should have resigned long before I did."
Okay, so now we're going to jump over to the 21st.
On the 21st, Ruel James, who from Taylor's last quote, he was a part of that executive board. There were about 3 others, and they all decided to leave at the same time, just because of the direction that TATM was going in. And you could see his interview with H.A. Goodman as well. And then Jordan also announces his plan to sue TYT, The Intercept, and possibly other reporters. And then obviously Tim Black received that email. So it's, as of right now, no legal action has been filed yet, but we have just seen threats to sue.
What we've seen is the process hasn't even started. No one's received any letters of formal litigation. So at this point, there's simply accusations to sue with we've not seen any evidence that they have been enforced in any way other than saying that they will be.
Yes, and we actually have a post, and this, again, November 21st, around 6:45 p.m., one of the members of the TATM management, Jen Dice, posted on Facebook announcing this intent to sue. It says, prominent progressive reporter announces intent to sue media outlets, including the Young Turks, The Intercept, for false sexual misconduct allegations. They quote Jordan Sheridan, being found guilty by tweet is unrecoverable. How do you have a career after that? It continues on November 16th, 2017, journalist Jordan Sheridan announced that he had been placed on leave by progressive news outlet The Young Turks following false accusations of sexual misconduct. Sheridan brought the situation to the attention of TYT himself and was told that a third party would be hired to investigate. Less than 48 hours later, amidst a storm of social media reactions, he was terminated from the Young Turks with no investigation having commenced. A subsequent announcement of his separation appeared on The Intercept, citing a leaked document from the Young Turks staff as its source. Multiple eyewitnesses have confirmed Sheridan's versions of events, and Sheridan has announced his intention to sue several outlets, most notably the Young Turks.
Right. So that's on the 21st. Now, if we want to jump to the 22nd, this is where we have a very large day where a lot of things happen. This is also the day where Jank announces his decisions on 2AT after the live show.
Yes. So we had a few ex-TATM reporters going on to H.A. Goodman's show, Summer Swan, Tara Lee, and then we have one of Jordan's management members, Jen Dice, posting a defense video on Facebook. We have Christina Lima from Politico releasing an article about Jordan Sheridan's termination from the Young Turks. And then Jordan contacted us here at Hardlens, sharing an article from Shadowproof and tweets which will open your eyes. And the Shadowproof article was in defense of Jordan. I don't know if you had any comment about him reaching out to us.
I was the contact person for Jordan during this. Obviously, I wanted to be very careful when I spoke because I wanted to make sure we had an open line of communication. So my summary for most of the times he would send us stuff would be we'd ask him a question. We wouldn't get the exact answer we were looking for. He would tweet an article or something that would defend his point of view and then would say something, again, along this one he said, it will open your eyes. You're a smart guy. You'll figure out what this means and things of that nature. So besides that, the day kept going on, and that's when Jank got involved.
Yes. So real quickly, wanted to go over the post from the Intercept that was titled, Young Turks and reporter abruptly part ways following sexual assault allegations. Within the article, they said Sheridan ran a side business that used the TYT company to effectuate Truth Against the Machine. Jordan never informed TYT of the scale of TATM, like having conferences or conventions and a number of people being paid under this operation. Jank goes on, he unfortunately brought in women that reported and also some TYT employees into hotel rooms and some in intimate settings, unacceptable poor management decisions, and clear firing offenses. TYT offered to give Jordan Sheridan until Wednesday the 22nd, the day that this came out, to resign with severance, but he declined. And Jordan Sheridan also refused to talk to the Young Turks. Him and his team will not release any statements. And he got an attorney. They've threatened to sue. And they kept this out of his... Jordan kept this out of his Medium article that the accuser was also an employee of his.
Right. And so then that, of course, was the first big, I guess, counter-punch against Jordan with a person with a larger media reach than he did. So that caused its own form of reaction. And, again, he gave us the Shadowproof article. But at that point, that's when a lot of people that hadn't heard about this, it was much more in the open for people who followed the Young Turks but hadn't been kept up with what's happening with Jordan. So, do you want to read anything from that quote, or can we move to the next day?
I guess just because of time,
We're going to be posting all of this anyway, so anything that we're...
Could I just ask a question,
yes.
though? Or at least not a question, basically a statement, because when Cenk Uygur made that statement that Jordan was using some funds from TYT, using the TYT credit card, we've all watched TYT even from the very beginning before they got that large studio, and Cenk would always say, hey, I've always kept an eye on my funds, nothing would, I'm always making sure everything's spent properly. I'm just wondering, how did Jordan do this without really getting Cenk's attention or anybody in TYT accounting's attention in regards to just displacement of funds and money? That has to take some work. And did anyone probably help cover up Jordan? What's the story behind that?
Well, that remains to be seen. I can say again from my experience working with Jordan, he would use that card a lot for drinks and basically whatever he did. I never really focused on, where is Jordan using this, because at that point it didn't seem like something to focus on. But yeah.
And it's also important to note that TYT did hire a third-party investigator. However, it was not for the sexual assault allegations. It was for the allocation of funds from TYT for TATM events.
Yeah.
So can we jump to the 23rd?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so the next few days following, again, we have more TATM ex-reporters or people that were editors coming out with their articles. Colin Hanna publishes his Medium article, Opinion, Carly Hammond, and Jordan Sheridan. The following day, we have former Truth Against the Machine editor-in-chief Taylor Raines appearing on H.A. Goodman. Tara Lee Griffin publishes her Medium article, Regaining My Balance. November 26th, we have two different reporters, both appearing on H.A. Goodman at different times, Nico House and Cindy Gomez-Schemp. And then on November 30th, we have Bill Moran publishing an article, Wrongfully Accused, Notice of Intent to Sue letter on behalf of Jordan Sheridan. December 1st, we have an ex-TATM reporter, Paula Martinez-Benj, appearing on H.A. Goodman. And then on December 5th, Jordan responds to us here at Hard Lens and tells us to read Christian's post on the Daily Haze.
And then his quote to us was, If I were you, I'd read the Daily Haze story about me today and see who the author is. You're a smart guy. I think you'll sense a pattern." And then we'll link that post when we in our follow-up.
And again, all of these interviews from that week we will be posting as well later today. Probably a solid 10 sources just on what we just covered over the last 2
Yeah, we've
minutes.
had to, just because we only have an hour to talk about it, we've skipped through a lot of stuff. And so now here's, I think, what might be because right now the timeline, I think, really sets a very good picture of how things transpired, why they transpired that way, what came first, who responded, why they responded the way they did. Now here, I think, more important is the numbers and the finances, because Truth Against the Machine, everything that was in this was donated. This was money that was donated by people. I actually put money into a corporate con job. And again, on the show, one of our first shows, we helped promote the book when Jordan was on.
That was during the People's Summit.
That was during the People's Summit.
Yeah.
And so here I want to give people an idea from what we've been able to discover through finances. You can imagine Jordan, a lot of money went into Truth Against the Machine, and we're going to go into it more detail. But just keep in mind, where do you think these funds were allocated? So Paula worked for Truth Against the Machine for 3 months. She was paid for all her articles a total of $100, which comes out to about $33 a month. Again, remember, she was not reimbursed for her plane ticket, which was $400, so effectively working for Truth Against the Machine cost her $100 a month to do. Christian, the editor, Huffington Post, was paid $200 over 5 months of work, which is $40 a month. Summer was paid $100 over 4 months, or $25 a month. Lauren was paid $100 over 3 months, or again, $33.33 a month. Tara Lee was paid $200 over 11 months, and she also did additional work helping TYT Politics.
And corporate con job.
And corporate con jobs, which effectively still comes out to $18.18 a month. And I want to say personally, when I did camera work for Jordan, I was paid $300 a day. But that was through the Young Turks, not through Truth Against the Machine. Carly was paid $800 over 4 months, or $200 a month. And Emily, before submitting any work to Truth Against the Machine, was given $250. And I want to go back to that when we were talking at the beginning with the summit that was done and this expensive bottle of wine. When you hear expensive bottle of wine, we obviously don't know what restaurant, what wine that they brought up. But to me, that says at minimum $40. That seems like a fair minimum to call something an expensive bottle of wine. I would expect it to be more, but I want to be very conservative. That's more than everyone except Carly got paid a month, just in that one bottle of wine. In late August, Truth Against the Machine received a $55,000 investment, which turned into either a $100,000 or $150,000 investment. We're going to say $100,000 to be as conservative with the numbers we have as possible, and we also know that through many of the interviews, Jordan was bragging about this donation, this investment, I should say, during the summit with multiple people. And so now we want to go to Paula said that Truth Against the Machine was supposed to be running on $800 a month. Here at Hard Lens Media, we pride ourselves on keeping our costs low. We run under $250 a month, plus volunteer work that we all do. So that makes sense. That's for a team that they wanted $800 a month. So we did the math. If you take just that base investment at the lowest you can expect it, they should have been funded for over a decade with that investment on its own. And again, we have everyone that worked for Jordan that we've talked to is paid less than $50 a month, except for the rare exception of Carly. Right now, as of the 8th, which would be yesterday at 5:06 p.m., Corporate Con Job currently has 215 patrons on Patreon. Now, we looked up the average, guesstimation of what an average Patreon viewer gives, and that's about $9.80. So that comes out to, as that estimate, $2,107 a month that is being made on estimate from Corporate Con Job right now, or as of yesterday at 5:06 p.m. In addition, if you go right now to truthagainstthemachine.com/donate -2 / you will see that Carly, who has been in all the other stories, the very big person fighting with Jordan, Summer, Lauren, and Mario, all of which do not work for Truth Against the Machine anymore, are still being advertised as people that you will help if you donate right now to Truth Against the Machine. So even though this fight is happening, Jordan's threatening to sue regarding it, they are still being used on the main page, on the donation page of Truth Against the Machine, to show here's the people you're helping, please donate money. And the money amounts that they go from all the way from $1 to $1,000. And if you actually add everyone that wasn't Carly or Emily, how much they were being paid a month, it's about $150 a month and that's just maybe one person donating a lot of money. And we'll go into what Lauren, because what they were told when they were brought on was a little different of how they got paid. But for right now, it's also good to note that even if you take all of that and you push that aside and say, okay, that doesn't matter what we've just gone through. Jordan said that he would never take $1 from Truth Against the Machine. Yet, Corporate Con Job was constantly advertised on Truth Against the Machine day in and day out. So what is advertised for? It's advertised, it may be chapters, but he wants that Patreon donation that we mentioned earlier. So even if he says he's not taking $1 for Truth Against the Machine, at minimum, we know it's very obvious he was using it as a form of advertising for his own projects. And by Jordan's own admission, the apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan that he rents costs $21,600 a year to live in. So, Lauren, when you were brought on to Truth Against the Machine, what were they telling you about how you were going to get paid?
Well, initially, it wasn't so much a discussion. It was purely kind of a volunteer basis. Truth Against the Machine, it launched in January of this year. They brought on their first official reporter, who was Tara Lee Griffin, back in February of this year. So, trying to get off the ground, as far as payment, it wasn't really a discussion until sometime in the summer when some of the upper management sent out an email asking for PayPal information because we had finally reached a certain amount of donations, or because of that investment, that we should be expecting some sort of payment. Now, I want to remind our viewers that not everyone was paid, and not everyone was paid fairly. The promise was the more you contributed, whether it was live streaming, all of the TATM reporters had access to be a Facebook Live contributor for the Truth Against the Machine page, as well as, social media presence too, as well as the Truth Against the Machine official website as well. So we had all of these platforms. The more, some people just submitted their work through YouTube videos, or they did live streams, or they did articles. So there were a lot of different ways that people could have contributed. But it was very clear, and almost every person that I've spoken to, it definitely was not following that protocol. The more you submitted, the more you would receive. And that truth, unfortunately, revealed itself, where you have TATM funds that were being used to pay for one of the members' phone and her phone bill. Some of the funds were used for rent, food, alcohol. That it wasn't spread out equally. It wasn't spread out fairly. And again, some of the members weren't even paid at all.
So again, you have a situation where they're getting investments of at minimum $100,000. You have right now, as of yesterday, an estimated over $2,000 a month to just corporate contra, but we can only imagine. We couldn't find access to what Truth Against the Machine itself was making a month, but I would speculate that because of the size of the organization, the fact that he promoted that as his big thing, that's probably would be making more a month. So let's say it makes the exact same amount as corporate contra. Let's say that's about $4,000 a month that's being made. You have this big investment, and yet all the people that are, I would consider the heart and soul of any operation, the people on the ground running it, the journalists doing the work, are getting paid nothing. And it seems very clear that there's funds available. I don't know what they would be investing in for about $4,000 a month plus $100,000 that wouldn't include giving some reasonable amount, or because correct me if I'm wrong, that all the numbers that I mentioned, Paula being 100 over 3 months, that's really just her working for 3 months and then one time at some point getting paid $100.
Most of those were a single payment. Okay.
So you have these payments being put out, and again, you're still being, even though you don't work for TATM anymore, you're still being used to advertise a reason to donate to TATM. So I want to know, one thing we couldn't get to the true bottom of, where's all the money going?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, just for perspective, I'll use myself as an example. I submitted about 6 articles and 3 videos over the couple of months that I was there and paid $100 for those 9 pieces there.
Would also one of those videos include that interview that we did with Benjamin Thomas Wolfe and Anthony Clark?
Mm-hmm. Everything I did.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
And if I'm not mistaken, when we did that live stream, you got bumped in the live stream because they didn't...
Yeah, that was something, when you have, a team of 20-some reporters, they had a schedule. But sometimes, one of the people I interviewed, she had acquired an interview with someone that was very difficult to get a hold of. And she had spent days in contact with this person, planning out that interview, and then she was bumped for whatever reason. One of the other reporters went live, and she just ended up having to record it on her own. But stuff like that happened all the time.
But you said it was important because she had a very specific title for legal reasons that she had to write the way that she wrote. And during her live stream, the editors changed that title in a way that would actually put the lawyer who she was talking to at grave legal jeopardy.
Yes, that as well. And that was pretty common as well. Titles being changed, sometimes not even the reporters not even being aware that those changes were made. But yeah, the one that Summer did mention did put that man in jeopardy. He could have been what is the word?
Disbarred.
Disbarred, yes.
So again, here's what I took out of the investigation. That I want to know where the funds are going, because there's a lot of money that seems to be coming into Truth Against the Machine. Yet it seems none of the reporters that are doing the work are getting any of it. And we're not talking a small amount. We're talking at least $100,000 and an estimated $4,000 between both networks. You have Jordan saying he's not going to take a single dollar out of this. Yet, again, just the summit itself, the meal that they were describing sounded more expensive than what all these people had been paid in the history of working for Truth Against the Machine. The plane tickets themselves for $400. Well, that's more than most people got paid by twice. And yet, again, where's that money going? Where is that money going? And then you have the other thing that's just a lot of people not caring about getting the story right from an upper management position. Person goes through a very hard time to get a very hard-to-reach lawyer trying to do something very specific, talking about something very, very, very important. Has to be done a certain way because it's legal. You have to make sure it matches the legalese. You can't go outside those boundaries. You have people overriding that, not because of maliciousness, but just because it sounds better. It's a nicer sounding title. It's more clickbaity. We'll get more views. Oh, by the way, while you're live streaming that, we accidentally double booked the live stream. Again, when we were with Laura and she was live streaming, she got that as well when she was doing that. So, again, we wanted to say from the beginning, we didn't really want to address the sexual nature of this because we felt that there was a much larger or a more large-scale story about what Truth Against the Machine was and how it was being run.
Yeah. And I think you guys did a fantastic job investigating something that was overlooked because, H.A. Goodman and Tim Black, Nico House, and a few others covered the allegations, but the financial aspect of Truth Against the Machine really requires investigation. Because even Cenk Uygur mentioned that was one of the reasons why he fired Jordan in the first place, because he was taking funds from TYT and using it to fund Truth Against the Machine, and then he's taking advantage of his donors. There's a lot of things that Jordan Sheridan needs to answer for, especially in regards to the financial aspect of Truth Against the Machine, what he was planning to do with that money, how he was going to pay his reporters, organization, and everything else. And I just want to make this statement that, this is a huge blow to investigative journalism and progressive independent media, because Jordan Sheridan inspired me and Daniel. He inspired Lauren.
He inspired all the people that he is labeling right now as conspirators, which, that's insulting in and of itself. All of those people that I've interviewed have all said the reason why or what drew them into joining Truth Against the Machine was because of the work that Jordan did.
Yeah, at Flint, Michigan, in East Chicago, Indiana.
Only to find out that
the Dakota Access Pipeline, and even breaking the Donna Brazil story and covering the obviously the election fraud that was happening during the Democratic primary in 2016. This
people don't work for you for free unless they're inspired.
Yeah,
to work for you.
Yeah, and this is just it's
and
hard
a lot of
to
people
see him,
got taken advantage of.
Yeah, it's really hard to see him, kind of recover from this, and we're gonna definitely continue on covering this story at probably a later time once more information comes out.
At some point we're gonna do a follow up with more, but we want to give some space. We want to let more develop.
Yeah.
But again, this is going to be up. The timeline will probably be up as well that we're reading from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can everything that we've read and a lot that we couldn't get to, we're going to bring up. We're going to bring up very soon. But right now, we basically covered this as best as we could, and now we want to move to our special guest. Kit, take it away.
Exactly. Hey, guys, and again, great investigative work, great job. So let me introduce our guest. We've actually interviewed him a few times before. He was actually at one of our first forums that we did way back in April, and then we interviewed him at a Daniel Biss event. I'm proud to introduce Illinois State Representative Will Guzzardi. Thank you so much for joining Hard Lens Media.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on today.
So I think for our viewers and listeners, can you just give them like an introduction to who you are and the district you represent, and just a story about yourself? Let's hear about you.
Yeah, so I'm state representative from the 39th district, which is on the northwest side of Chicago, not too far from where we are right now, actually, up in Logan Square, Belmont Cragen, Portage Park. I'm in my third year in the legislature, and before I came to politics, I moved to Chicago after college. I grew up on the East Coast, and I came here wanting to be a journalist. And my first job in Chicago was working for the Huffington Post in Chicago, doing local news for them here, which was fascinating, and I totally loved it. And it got me connected to the political world. I ran for office for the first time in 2012 when I was 24 years old, and I ran against an incumbent state rep who was part of the sort of old school Chicago political machine, and she'd been in office for about 10 years, and nobody really thought we had much of a chance. But we figured that, these folks had money and power and connections and influence, but they weren't really doing the grassroots organizing that it takes to be effective. And if we were able to build a movement of people around some progressive values and go door to door and talk to voters, we might be able to persuade them that the Democratic Party could be different, that it didn't just have to be this machine-driven political power structure, that the Democratic Party could actually do what it purports to do, which is stand up for the interests of working people. So that was the campaign we ran, and we ended up getting about 49.5% of the vote that first time in 2012. We lost by about 100 votes. It was a very close race. Then, long story short, we ran again 2 years later in 2014 against the same incumbent and won by a wide margin. Got like 61% of the vote that second time around. And so then in 2015, I came into office, and it's been a wild ride since then.
Yeah, your name has definitely been mentioned a lot because you've been fighting for a lot of progressive policies here in Illinois. And as we all know, the state of Illinois is definitely recovering from a budgetary crisis, and our state has a long, sad history of corruption and money in politics. And you, as an elected official, have really been stepping up in regards to fighting for the people. And we've seen you at a couple events, especially for people addressing gentrification and rent control and the ever increase of owning a home here, not only in Cook County but across the state of Illinois. Sure. So let's actually address this one issue. The talk of rent control in Chicago and other townships in Illinois has become like a huge talking point amongst activists and grassroots organizations, as well as new candidates who want to definitely reform the Democratic Party. And this mainly has to deal with the fact that in Illinois, there is a 1997 rule that forbids rent control, and that's called the Rent Control Preemption Act. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
All right, and so I think for a lot of our listeners and viewers who might be hearing about this for the first time or maybe forgot about it, what is this act, and what has been the long-term impact on the people of Illinois? And who is responsible for pushing this act in the Springfield legislature?
Yes, that's a great question. And this is a really important issue to me because I live in a community in Logan Square where rent prices have gone through the roof, and the result has been real displacement for tens of thousands of Latino families in my neighborhood who have been forced to leave as prices have gone up. So stabilizing housing prices, I think, has got to be on our, and it's not just true in Logan Square. I mean, it's, I've been working on this issue with organizers in Bronzeville and Englewood and in Uptown and, all across the city of Chicago, communities facing these same challenges. So, yeah, in the 90s, you guys are familiar with ALEC, I'm sure, the American
Yes.
Legislative Exchange Council, I think. Anyway, it's this, sort of right-wing policy organization that comes up with state legislative ideas and pushes them out to their state legislative allies around the country. And this was a big one of theirs in the 90s, was to prevent cities from enacting ordinances to control rent increases. Sorry, that's a lot of clauses all at once. So they wanted to make state laws that said no city in our state can create any city ordinance to constrain the ability of landlords to raise rents in any way. And so this happened all over the country. Illinois was among those states that did this. And it was passed in a bipartisan way. The realtors are a very powerful lobbying influence in Springfield. And so, and of course, low-income folks who are trying to stay in their homes and are renting, don't have a powerful lobbying presence, obviously. So it passed with overwhelming bipartisan support in the 90s. And it's just crazy overreach on the part of state government. Like, what business do we have telling the city of Chicago or Evanston or Peoria or wherever that they don't have the right to try to address this huge crisis, right? This should be up to the cities to figure out what are the best tools we can use to prevent landlords from making egregious increases in the rent of their tenants. And so I have a bill in Springfield to repeal the Rent Control Preemption Act.
It's called House Bill 2430, is that correct?
That's right, yeah. And it's we have a grassroots coalition has formed to support this effort. They're called the Lift the Ban Coalition. And again, it's community organizations and political groups from all over the city and beyond who want to see us pass this bill in Springfield so that we can actually address these problems here in the city of Chicago and elsewhere.
Right. So Heartland's Media actually has been at two Our Revolution Illinois events, one being at the Chicago Teachers Union Center and another with the Northwest Side Housing Center, in which you, Representative Guzzardi, were part of a panel discussing the Barrios tax plan and the cost of owning a home paying rent in Cook County. And we've actually had two guests on the last two Saturdays, James Rudick from the Northwest Side Housing Center, and as well as the challenger for the Cook County Assessor position, Fritz Kagi, as well. And I asked him the same question in regards to the Barrios tax plan and what is the impact that it has on the people of Cook County. Yeah,
well, so it's real, and I think every news story that comes out about what's going on with the assessor's office reveals the further depth of the crisis that we're facing in the property tax system. And the problem is pretty straightforward, which is that the big skyscrapers downtown, they're assessed at a certain value, and then they hire fancy law firms, politically connected law firms, to go appeal those assessments. And so then the value of those properties magically drops, right? And the assessment system is, it's sort of a zero-sum game. So, like, there's a certain amount of money that they're trying to get out of the whole county, which is called the levy. And if one actor pays less, everybody else has to pay more to make up the difference. That's just how the system works. So it's very literally true that when these politically connected rich guys downtown get tax breaks, it costs all of us more. And whether you're a homeowner or a renter, because if you're a renter, your landlord is going to pass that property tax increase right onto you in the form of higher rent next month. So yeah, we're seeing the assessor and the politically connected law firms that represent these big buildings, they're in cahoots to give tax breaks to the very wealthiest property owners in Illinois and make the rest of us pay more.
And it was also very interesting that because the system is now being run, when we were talking to Fritz Kagi, he said the optimal system is that the office is telling people what they can do, what exemptions they can do, but the way the current system is based on appeal. But
right.
Like you said, who appeals? People that have the money to appeal and hire a lawyer.
That's right. Yeah, I mean the whole premise of the system is we're going to overassess you and then hire a lawyer and then come in for your appeal and then we'll give you the fair assessment. It's like that. Obviously, the biases that are built into that are just on their face, right? And you can imagine how. And also, you can imagine for a renter like me, my landlord might say, well, instead of hiring an attorney and appealing this, I'm just going to raise the rents. And that's how I'll cover the difference in the cost. So the effect on renters, the effect on low-income homeowners is disproportionate. It's staggering. And the data, the Tribune has been doing some investigations on this, and the Better Government Association, and they've got really sort of robust data to show that communities of color, low-income communities, are being vastly disproportionately affected by these unfair assessments.
Yeah, we've seen the same story in Pilsen, Northwest Side Housing Center in South Austin, and of course, a lot of these communities, there's a lot of working class families who are working not only one job, but maybe 2 or 3 jobs, maybe a single parent working 2 or 3 jobs, and they're not making ends meet.
Yeah.
And it seems like there is a lack of accountability in Cook County and City Hall. So in regards to that, what have these grassroots organizers said to you in regards to getting help from Springfield? I mean, what have they said to you?
Yeah, so, I think the best thing that we can do, Senator Biss last year introduced a bill called the Home Act, which had a lot of sort of technical reforms to the way that assessments work around the state. And Senator Biss is a very intelligent guy, as you guys know, and he spent a lot of time doing a lot of research and thinking through what figuring out the sort of technical aspect of it, right? So that's one piece, is that we got to make sure that the assessments are done right mathematically, right? And the national organizations of assessors have standards that and we're not meeting any of those standards. So we got to hold people to those standards. But the other thing, this is connected to, in my view, what's the central crisis in American politics right now, right? This is one iteration of this central crisis, which is that government is supposed to be the institution that protects the many against the greed of the few, right? That, like, we created government because we were being oppressed by tyrants, right? And we wanted a powerful institution that we all participated in, that protected all of us, that provided for the general welfare. It's written into the Constitution, right, in the preamble. We want something that protects all of us against them. And the problem is that they have bought government. The few own government. They use their power and their money and their connections to control what government does. And so now government, instead of being an agent for the many, is an agent for the few. It's protecting their interests, shielding their interests, and hurting us in the process. This is a perfect example of that. And this is what I think it means to be progressive. You know, we talk about this word all the time. What does the word progressive mean? This is what I think it is. That we believe that government has a rightful place defending our interests against their interests. And we need to take government back so that it is put in that place, so that it can be the advocate for the many that it needs to be, instead of just serving the interests of the few.
Now, we've seen money in politics and how it's crippled our democracy. Voters, like regular average voters, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, they all agree that there should be free and fair elections in our country.
Yeah.
And currently, our elected officials are influenced by large corporate donors and corporations. And Representative Will Guzzardi, you have joined and worked alongside groups like Our Revolution Illinois and the Northwest Side Housing Center. And these grassroots organizations are gaining power, and there's numerous others like them starting to grow all across this country. So there are, though, people from the establishment that state that big money will win. You have to play along to be part of the system, and that you can't beat big money. So what are your thoughts on these statements and on Citizens United that basically that opened the door for large money to basically buy our elected officials?
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, Citizens United is an unmitigated disaster, and it has, when I'm talking about this problem of the wealthy guys owning government, right? Campaign finance is the primary vehicle by which they do this. They get influence over our elected officials by being able to fund their campaigns. So Citizens United is a huge problem for the American democracy, and I think we need to amend the U.S. Constitution to fix it. But I also want to say that I don't think that big money is insurmountable. I think it's hard to beat, no doubt about it. All things being equal, big money is going to beat no money, right? But, I think of my own election when I ran against somebody who outspent us overwhelmingly. I mean, in the course of 2 elections, my opponent and the forces that supported her spent over $1 million trying to beat me. And obviously, I was 24 years old, getting paid $10 an hour at Huffington Post, so I wasn't in a position to spend $1 million. But we were able to win ultimately because, first of all, we had a clear message about what we wanted to be different. I think that's something that, as we all know, like, the way we're going to win elections against these big money guys is by telling a clear story about what's wrong and how we propose to fix it. Not just saying you should vote for a Democrat or you should vote for me or whatever, but saying this is what's wrong in this country, this is what's wrong in our state, this is how I propose to fix it. And then by doing the sort of hard, unpleasant work of grassroots organizing, of going door to door, of recruiting volunteers, of being on the phones, talking to voters, meeting people at community organizations in their homes, and having those conversations, those one-on-one, face-to-face conversations that change the way people view the world, right? And a lot of people came out and voted for me because they had met me, because we had a conversation about what we thought that politics ought to be, what was wrong with the way politics were now. These guys are just out there fighting for themselves and their friends and their interests, and, we need new leadership to fight for the interests of our communities. And we were able to beat big money with organizing, right? So I don't think it's impossible. I really believe in the power of the movement that we're all building. And if we can fix the campaign finance system, we can remove some of the handicaps that are holding us back, because the corrupt campaign finance system in this country and in this state really are hamstringing our ability for this movement to take off in the way that it otherwise might. So if we can remove some of those barriers, I think we're going to see our movement gain tremendous power.
In fact, I believe a few weeks ago, there was an election that took place in which progressives and Democrats won in seats that normally belong to Republicans or establishment Democrats. In New Jersey and in Pennsylvania?
Virginia.
Sorry about that. Virginia, where two Democratic governors basically beat the Republican governors who were in those seats of power for a very long time. And
you had the majority whip of the Republican House getting beat by a virtually unknown guy that was openly saying, "I'm a socialist."
Yeah, and
in a Republican district, it's a sign of the times.
Yeah, and especially for Democratic Social America, 15 of their people actually won some electoral seats. So, of course, we all know in 2018 there's going to be a very important midterm primary election for governor here in Illinois. And you, Representative Guzzardi, endorsed Senator Daniel Biss to be to win the nomination, as well as to be supporting him to be governor of Illinois should he get the nomination. So I think what all of us want to ask is, why does his campaign stand out amongst Kennedy or Pritzker or Theo Hardman or Bob Daber? And why should the people of Illinois consider Senator Daniel Biss to get the nomination and to become the governor of our state?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of reasons, and I want to highlight two of them. First of all, this is not one of the two, but as an aside before I get into it, I've known Daniel since before I got elected, and he's been a really great mentor to me in Springfield. He's helped me learn the ropes down there. Just personally, I've gotten to know him and his family, and he's just a decent and caring human being. Not to say that anyone else running isn't, but I have a great deal of respect for him. He's intelligent. He's passionate. He's a great guy. But why am I supporting him? Why do I think he'd be a great governor? First of all, I think that the two other sort of leading candidates, both of them are from the few, right? Remember I was talking before about the few and the many, right? J.B. Pritzker and Chris Kennedy, these are guys from enormous wealth and privilege, which isn't to say they're not good or decent people, but it's to say that they're using their money and privilege to buy this election, or hoping to. And they're hoping, Pritzker in particular is hoping that his personal wealth is going to be able to outduel Bruce Rauner's personal wealth in the general election, and then we'll have a Democrat instead of a Republican. But, having a battle between two billionaires, I think it's really not going to inspire our voters to go out and vote. I think it's a political problem. Like, I'm not sure J.B. Pritzker can beat Bruce Rauner, because I think a lot of our people are just going to sit at home and be like, Democrat billionaire, Republican billionaire, I don't really care.
It's almost like a mini 2016 general election what happened between Clinton and Trump, two of the least popular candidates to run for president in U.S. history.
That's right. And, J.B. Pritzker is, talking a lot of policies that I support, although in some cases not quite as strongly as I wish he would. He certainly hasn't come out for single-payer health care, which I think is really important, but he's talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour and some other good things. We've pushed him to the left in the primary here as he's trying to win over our votes. But, when someone is only beholden to themselves for how they got elected, right, when it's his own personal millions and billions that are going to be spent to get him elected, who's he going to answer to when he's in office? Right? He's just going to, he doesn't, if we say, wait a second, you promised us this or that or the other thing, he might say, look, I don't care. I got here on my own steam. I don't need your guys' help. I'm going to do what I want to do. Senator Biss is running a campaign that is grassroots focused. It's people powered. He knows who's putting him in office, and it's not billions, and it's not his own money. It's the people who are working around this state, volunteers, people who are given $5 and $10, organizers, all of us who are chipping in to try to build this movement on his behalf. And so when he gets into office, not only are his personal values aligned with the stuff I believe is important, but he knows that he's accountable to all of us because we got him in there. And so he's going to have to answer to us when it comes time for him to make policy. So I think that's critically important. Like, how you get elected says a lot about how you're going to govern. And I think I would much rather have a guy who got elected by a movement of people rather than a guy who sunk his own money into it and bought the seat himself.
There's been a lot of concerns that should Pritzker or maybe Kennedy win the nomination, that they're going to have a hard time winning the counties outside of Illinois because the Democratic Party as a whole kind of left those districts and abandoned them and mostly focusing on areas that would predominantly just vote blue.
Right.
So there is a concern that if Pritzker's the nominee or Kennedy, that Bruce Rauner can win, even though he's losing support. He has low approval ratings, and even during his budgetary battle with Michael Madigan, he even lost support from the Republicans in the Illinois State House and Senate in order just to let Illinois have a budget. So do you believe that Senator Daniel Biss has the ability to really reach out to these counties abandoned by the Democratic Party and get potential independent voters, disenfranchised Democrats, and even possibly Republicans to vote for his campaign should he win the nomination and go up against Bruce Rauner?
I do. Yeah, I mean, I think that the message that the political system has been bought and paid for by the interests of the wealthy and has been, regardless of what party you believe in, that those guys are running government for themselves and they're leaving the rest of us behind. I mean, you look at the tax bill in Washington right now. I mean, that's obviously the case right there, right? There just is this rich guys helping rich guys and screwing over everybody else. And I think that argument is very powerful and transcends geography and transcends the urban-rural divide. I think we could really reach out to some communities that the Democratic Party has had trouble with in recent years by focusing on that message, right? Government is supposed to be looking out for all of us. At its best, it can really provide important goods for everybody, but right now it's just serving the guys in power, the rich and wealthy and connected and powerful and influential folks. And if we want to change the way our society works, we got to take back government. We have to elect people who come from us and not from them. I think Daniel is very well equipped to carry that message. And I think that gives us a chance to have a really important victory in 2018.
All right, well, that's a great note to end it on. Real quick, where can our viewers and listeners follow you on social media to learn about maybe what kind of events you're going to be at? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so my name is Will Guzzardi, Guzzardi, and my Twitter is @WillGuzzardi, and my Facebook is /Will Guzzardi, and my website is willguzzardi.com, so it's all pretty easy to find. All
right, well, Representative Guzzardi, thank you so much for joining Hard Lens Media. To our listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in. We want to definitely thank our Patreon supporter for coming in to being our live audience. You know, that's one of the benefits that you get. So check out our Patreon page so you can see how you could help Hard Lens Media out. We need all the support we can to build an independent media outlet here in Chicago so that we can cover stories that corporate media won't cover. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Peace to all of you. You can listen to us again next Saturday at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And plus, we have our show on CAN TV starting at 7 p.m., Channel 21. Peace, and let's all do what we can to build a better future, everyone.